Welcome into Film Tank, the weekly podcast that covers both new and classic cinema. On this episode, we discuss two classic Disney animated films, which are Aladdin and The Lion King. If you would like to get in touch with Film Tank, you can always email us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Film Tank Show. And you can listen to all of our episodes on our website, filmtankshow.com, or on iTunes. And now, here are your hosts, Nick Cheney, Toussaint Egan, and myself, Alex Diekman. Hello there, everybody, and welcome in to episode 193 of Film Tank. I am Alex Diekman, along with my two buddies, Nick Cheney.
Hey!
Wow.
Sorry, I don't have my headphones on, so I don't know how loud I'm talking.
It was very loud. That's not good for anybody.
Oh boy.
Okay. Also, Toussaint Egan.
It's a Film Tank episode.
That's the new intro right there. We just bookmarked that. It's good. Excellent. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to you.
Welcome to you.
Oh,
Hey, that's a
feel
movie
honored.
starring Kirsten Wiig. No, that's Welcome to Me. Never mind. Little tidbit for you.
is it Kirsten or Kristen?
Kirsten, I think.
Kirsten, really?
Maybe it's Kristen. I don't know what
Boy. I don't know
I thought
really.
it's Kirsten Dunst.
I was going to say, I don't know
Oh, that's what I'm
many
thinking
famous Kirstens other
Never
than
mind,
Kirsten
Kristen.
Dunst. Kristen.
Sorry, Kristen.
Sorry, Kristen.
Asshole.
We're sorry.
Not really.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's
Got money.
okay with life.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
She's got that bridesmaid money.
Career. I was going to say her career hasn't really taken off.
Does it need to after Bridesmaids?
Yeah. All you got to
Saturday Night Live.
All you need is
She's
to
the Target
have
girl.
one.
She
really,
shopped at Target.
All she needs is one successful film and a really sound financial advisor, and she'll be just.
She had that fabulous performance as the assistant in Mother. I mean, excellent.
Oh yeah, that's right. Shit. Damn.
This is art.
What? She was literally parting a Red Sea.
That's right.
Yeah, wow. That's we're not going to talk about that film.
No?
We're going to bury that again.
That comes up a lot.
No,
in this podcast.
it's not ever going to come up again.
Good luck to you, sir.
Yep.
So today, going to take an opportunity to take a probably brief look back, as we've covered both of these films previously on this podcast, actually in a smaller on our animated episode, which was eons ago now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But with the live-action Aladdin coming out to the theater just last week, and the Lion King sort of live-action coming out later this year.
They're real animals.
Sure. I personally thought it would be a great time to look back at the two classic animated films from the early 90s, which are Aladdin and The Lion King.
Uh-oh, retrospective episode. Hop into the TARDIS. Woo, 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 woo. We're here.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Now where you've arrived. It's great.
Yep, back in the 90s.
I was going to say...
Boy, can we stay here?
I was going to say a much simpler time.
Oh, was it, though?
George H.W. Bush was president.
I wasn't seeing a therapist.
Yeah, there's still some good cartoons on Nickelodeon.
So speaking of cartoons, so a big reason why I wanted to go back and rewatch these films, I mean talk about them too, but really take the time to rewatch them, is I've really been wanting to watch more true animated films recently, just because...
Like two-dimensional traditional animation?
Yes, because I feel...
Cell animation, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this was, at least for my lifetime so far, the peak of Disney creativity when it came to the way that they actually created images on the screen. I know that in the glory years, long ago, when they made the original animated films that everybody remembers, like Cinderella and Snow White, they had all these unique things that they did that were completely off the wall and revolutionary and made the picture pop out and made you able to create depth throughout the screen and things that people were never seen on the screen before or anywhere, really. But then there was a renaissance in the late 80s and through the 90s in which I think there are 6 Disney films that are part of its renaissance era, of which these are 2. And it includes Beauty and the Beast is the other major one. But then there are other ones that are kind of like secondary, like
think of the
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I think of the late era
Mulan.
films, like Tarzan. I think of.
I don't think that's technically in that group.
I mean, this is talking about late era, like before they totally phased out of like doing like.
Is Hercules like the tail end of the Renaissance?
Hercules is one of the Renaissance films.
I mean, as far as like, I think they're on their way out.
They were.
Yeah, but that was still kind of part of that spirit.
Yeah,
I think it's in the same. I mean, these films have a lot of very similar themes across them. Not that all Disney films don't in some way, but
hey, I like Hercules better than I like one of the 2 films we're going to talk about.
I do like Hercules too.
I'm a big fan of Hercules.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of really.
I'm a little fan of Hercules.
Because you're a little guy.
I mean, I like Phil from Hercules. He's a cool character.
Yeah. Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito is a great actor.
He is an actor.
One of our greatest living actors.
Oh, God.
You know, I know he was canceled, but...
He's not canceled. What do you mean?
Not him. I'm about to tell a story. But the episode of The Larry Sanders Show where Jeffrey Tambor's character, Hank Kingsley, gets to go audition for, at that time, when Disney was making the Hercules movie. And he believes, because his voice is so surly and, rough, that, of course, he would be going to audition for the voice of Hercules. But he was not. He was brought in to audition for the voice of, like, a goat or something.
Yeah. Like,
not even Phil, but just a random whatever. And, oh, man, that's just... I can't not think about just Hank Kingsley.
Technically,
yes,
the Disney Renaissance period includes 10 films over a 10-year period.
Whoa.
Okay.
The last of which is Tarzan.
Oh, wow.
So the Renaissance period includes The Little Mermaid.
Oh, that's part of it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
The Rescuers Down Under.
Okay.
Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
Aladdin.
Okay.
The Lion King.
Okay. Sorry.
You okay?
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
It's like Mr. Garrison over here.
Yeah, okay.
Same guy.
Okay.
Continue.
Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan.
But where does Beauty and the Beast and Enchanted Christmas fall?
There's no Enchanted
Not
Christmas.
on this list.
Yeah, that's a direct to video
Direct
release.
to my heart.
No. I mean, the last two of the last Disney animated films. Like actually, like I think of Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I think of The Emperor's New Groove, and I think of The Princess and the Frog. Only 2 of which of those I've actually seen. Those are late era. Those are
Princess and the Frog was an offshoot years after they'd abandoned 2D animation.
Yeah.
People were saying we want to see this, and they're like. They gave a shit movie, and people were like, this was garbage. And they're like, see, we're never doing this again.
But that wasn't... They totally phoned it in. Like that's...
I know.
Yeah.
I think that might have been their plan.
Yeah, that's kind of their whole plan.
That being said...
Not to mention, really
I think it's
going
to come back at some point.
At some point.
What?
But not to mention...
People love nostalgia.
The Princess and the Frog 2, they banked... not 2, as well... one of the other caveats kind of that film was that they were also banking on having their first African-American
they totally
quote-unquote Disney princess.
They buried
so that was
2 things at
another
the same
thing
time. Yeah.
for both. I'm guessing how that fueled into their marketing, which is the idea that I'm sure they didn't hype it up as much as they could have, but also the retroactive of like, well, we tried to give you your woke Disney, and y'all didn't show out.
We try to put a black in it and see how you rewarded us. We try to make a fucking traditional film, see how you reward us. Well, it's your fault, not ours. It's not like we totally phoned this in and made a shit film and then totally buried it.
The animation in The Princess and the Frog isn't actually that bad.
No, I own it, and I've watched it, and some of the songs are okay, and it's just not... It's exactly what middle ground Disney looks like.
Yeah.
But to stage a comeback, you gotta, do better than that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they really wanted to do a comeback.
No.
Because you need talented people and money to
Once
make these
Pixar
kind of
became
films.
a thing,
Yeah,
Disney.
When Toy Story happened, that is when like
It was a
2D
I was
animation
gonna
was
say,
taken
it
out
was
to
a
the back of the
transition.
ship.
It's more
It
of a
was-
2000s when you saw that it was a sustainable model.
You're right.
'cause, then that was like, oh, we buy that, and now we only do this, even when we're not in Pixar.
Which is kind of a shame because I gotta tell you, like, even if you don't love one of the films we're talking about today, but the fact that in a 4-year span you had Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King all released at the same time is pretty incredible when you look back on it, because those are all pretty much classics.
Yeah.
So, the movie we'll talk about first, I guess, will be the first movie we watched on this rewatch, which was Aladdin, which makes sense since it was released in 1992, 2 years before The Lion King.
How old were we?
I mean, it dates as far back as like my earliest memory of like watching Aladdin.
That's not my question.
I think I was I'm trying to see how old were we. So I was like, I'd have to be like
This is a math problem.
I had to be like
not an English.
I mean, I had to be like 3 when I first like remember watching it, being
No.
cognizant of watching it.
How
I was
old
2.
were you when the film came
I was
out?
fucking 2.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
here
Boom.
we go.
I was 5.
I was 1.
Okay. Yeah. You were somehow taller than you are now, so that's weird how that works.
That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make
I
any
know.
sense.
That's what I'm saying. It's fucked up.
You can do better.
You can do better.
This fucking parrot?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah, just like in this movie. Ha Now you'll eat the crackers.
To be fair, these movies do make a good double feature because it's all about birds who are fucking tired of this shit.
That's true. It is very true.
So,
Some more helpful than others.
Iago is definitely an interesting bird. I mean, you talk about the voices of the birds. You've got Gilbert Gottfried,
Who is
in
canceled.
Aladdin, and then you have Mr. Bean in
Who
The
is
Lion King.
not canceled.
No, and it's funny that everybody knows him as Mr. Bean when actually Rowan Atkinson is like a terrific actor. His work in Blackadder, the series, is arguably even more famous. Like Mr. Bean is like the American signpost of what we think of Rowan Atkinson, but like in England, he is a national treasure. And anyway, I just wanted to give him a shout out because he's underrated.
Deserves it.
He's got some great line readings.
I was gonna say he's a really great. He's a really great voice performer, as well as just an actual actor. The Mr. Bean stuff is.
That's all that I'm really familiar with him with. But yeah, sounds.
Gotta watch Blackadder.
Yeah.
So in Aladdin, we find a kind-hearted street urchin and a power-hungry grand vizier who vie for a magic lamp that has the power to make their deepest wishes come true. God, who wrote this shit?
Yeah.
So this
Street
film,
urchin.
yeah,
Street rat.
this film has the voices of Robin Williams, as everybody will know, as the genie.
Oh, there's a story behind that.
Is there?
Oh, yes, there is. There's a huge story about like the legacy of Robin Williams. Like because when this film was first being like shopped around through Disney, like before Robin Williams was even signed on to actually like work on it, it was basically being like touted as a Robin Williams vehicle. Like Eric Goldberg, who was one of the lead animation like one of the lead animators on it, actually just created animatic of the genie, basically just going off of one of the recordings of Robin Williams' like old skits and stuff, right? And because Robin Williams was a huge fan of animation and he wanted to be a part of animation, he actually signed on to do this film. But before that, he actually had also signed on to another film. Does anybody else know what that other film was? Fucking Fern Gully. He signed on to do Fern Gully before he did Aladdin, right? And he agreed to be a part of both films. Like he already made an outstanding obligation to do Fern Gully, and Fern Gully was going through like development hell or something like that, and that's why it was so protracted. And that's why Aladdin was going forward more quickly with regards to that. Basically, in a lot of ways, the entire production of this film sort of morphed around Robin Williams and his performance as the genie. Like Eric, I found this speech that he did, this presentation he did on Twitter that was linked through one of the cartoon blogs that I actually follow, and he was talking about how, you know, in his however so long career, that Aladdin was probably the most improvisational film that he had ever done as an animator, because it was literally like the first musical number that the genie does, where he's going through all these different transformations and he's performing for Aladdin, and then at the end he has the applause sign. There's actually a story behind that, because it's like, we did a testing with these kids and they didn't necessarily they didn't applaud at the end of that song. It's like, can we just put an applause sign there? It's like, and just those sort of ways of like, to us it doesn't seem like a big deal, but back then, even like gesturing towards the fourth wall and actually like outright breaking it and actually like gesturing towards the actual audience, especially in the beginning where you have the merchant who is like talking to the audience and like pressing against the screen, that was like a big deal back then. People just didn't do that, and
especially in a film for kids.
Yeah, and something that I mentioned while we were actually watching it, where there is a scene where the genie transforms into Pinocchio for a second with like a extended nose, saying that like Aladdin is a liar. Like, that was sort of a watershed moment of self-referentiality with Disney films at that time, because I think that before that they didn't really do a lot of that. And then we go to Lion King, which I cannot remember the exact situation, but I know that there is
It's a Small World.
Yeah, then there's another like small gesture towards like a not a shared universe, obviously, but just sort of like, we own these characters and we own these things. Like, why don't we just like put them in as a bit for people who are willing to like look at them and be like, oh, I remember that sort of like situation.
And the genie's wearing a Goofy mask or Goofy hat.
Yeah.
At the end of the
there's another reference in there too.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there's I don't mean to like just, you know, steamball over this stuff, but I was actually like looking up and doing some research about the history of Aladdin, like leading up to this. But there is this really great video on YouTube by a media critic by the name of Lindsay Ellis, yeah, and she was basically going through the entire history of how did we get to a point where all of these animated films are basically marketed and sold and promoted off of the celebrity name talent that like precedes them, right? Like, you have Whoopi Goldberg as this character, or you have I don't know, Jason Statham as one character or something like that. I don't know. It's like, I'm just pulling names out of the top of my head. But you have Shrek, and people usually point to Shrek as being like the huge watershed, whereas like this is where, at least it was the case for like 3D animated films. That's where it sort of like really picked up steam, and it
found a voice that was completely on the way out.
Exactly,
and brought him in.
Exactly, and then it just keeps on building momentum. But really, the impetus for the inflection point, the inception of it, comes from Robin Williams in Aladdin. And here's an interesting thing about Robin Williams signing on to do Aladdin. He says, like, okay, I don't want my voice. I want to be a part of animation. I love animation. I think he was very much influenced by animation, like coming up as a young like comedian, and he just wanted to be a part of that, especially for his kids, right? But he was like, I don't want my voice and my name to be used to market this film necessarily. We already know. You look to each other and you see how that may not match up, because he was like, I want this to basically, like, he wanted to be paid at least at Screen Actor Guild like rate, where it was like $700,000 for his appearance in that film. And
what a saint.
And he did not want his, I mean, he was a screen actor, so this is what it is.
I'm making a joke.
Yeah, I know, yeah, but he didn't want his name to be used in more than 25% of the promotional material for the film itself. And to be fair, that's sort of like what they did. Like, for the first actual like poster for Aladdin, they just show the lamp, and his name is barely even really mentioned on there. Not until like the later posters that sort of come out, like in the lead up to the film. But then the way that they got around that was through the actual material merchandise, because it's not pertaining to directly the film itself, but rather the promotion of these toys and shit like that. And he was very incensed about that.
Well, so it's funny you say that, because there are 2 direct-to-video sequels to Aladdin.
In the first one, he was not involved.
But he was in the second one.
He was in the second one because by that point, the executive, I cannot remember his name. It may have been Patzenberg or whatever. He was the guy who was overseeing a lot of that shit. He was already on the way out, and the new guy who came in basically made a public apology, like in a actual like newspaper editorial, like back when people did that back then, where he just basically says, like, this is my mea culpa. It's like we entered into an agreement in good faith and in trust with Robin Williams, and for some reason we did not fulfill on that, and I want to personally extend an apology to Robin Williams for having done that. We did not mean to like abuse your name and to abuse your talent in that way, and he did, and he came back.
And also too, if you watch the second one, it's not good, because Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer Simpson and other characters, comes in as the genie, and it's not good.
No, probably has something to do with the fact that
he comes in as the genie.
He is the genie in the second movie.
Yeah,
but I thought Robin Williams came back for the second movie.
He came back for the third movie.
Yeah,
for the
second.
We talked about
for the second direct-to-video film.
No, for the first direct-to-video. So I'm sorry.
All right, so that's where we're getting confused.
Okay.
Yes, you were saying first and second direct-to-video.
Who's
sequel.
on first? Yeah,
the second Aladdin film has all the same actors doing the voices.
That's Return of the Jafar. Yeah.
And, other than the genie, who's voiced by Dan Castellaneta.
Yeah.
And then the third film,
King of Thieves,
I remember clearly because I owned the third film, because Robin Williams came back, and there's no way in this era that would not have come to the theater.
Yeah.
But at that time,
it was a late era.
They still thought that people didn't want to watch sequels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a late era, like one of those direct-to-video, like Disney releases.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually prominently did feature, like, it's Aladdin, the King of Thieves, starring Robin Williams, like, on the actual, like, casing. So that was
at that point, it was a little...
I mean, there's nothing really left of Aladdin's story.
Yeah, there really wasn't. It was a good movie, though. I enjoyed it. Looked cool.
So, anyways...
But that's all my trivia for
just finishing up other people involved in this project. Scott Winger does the voice of Aladdin. And also we have Linda Larkin doing the voice of Princess Jasmine, a guy named Jonathan Freeman doing the voice of Jafar, and then a couple other people you may have heard of, including Douglas Seal doing the voice of the Sultan, and Gilbert Gottfried as Iago the bird, or parrot. So, other than your thoughts and what you've been kind of reading up on regarding Robin Williams and everything regarding his performance, what are your just overall thoughts on this particular film, Toussaint?
I think this film is amazing. I think that the animation is incredible. I think that the backgrounds, the painted backgrounds for this are just fucking gorgeous. Like, I literally was taken aback multiple times, being like, holy shit, when they first, like, pan out to, like, Agrabah, when they show the interior of the throne room for the Sultan, when they show the balcony for Jasmine's room.
I was gonna say,
like, all of those fucking, like, backgrounds are so incredible. And in the interior of the Cave of Wonders with all the ancient gold and stuff, and the inner chamber where where the lamp is housed, like, that reminded me a lot of the latter Disney animated film, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I feel like that was definitely a huge, like, influence on that. I think that Aladdin was a huge influence on that particular scene with the chamber for the crystal in that film. It's just, it really, I'm not even trying to say this for, like, nostalgia's sake. It's like, it's hard for me to separate a critical assessment from a sort of a nostalgic assessment, because this is literally this film is linked to one of the earliest memories that I have in life in general. But it's just I can totally see how this film was a benchmark for its time. I can totally see how well it works. I can see how this film could have unintentionally birthed an entire generation of theater kids, just singing pantomime to the songs in this, and listening back to the lyrics of this, because I wasn't listening to that when I was a kid. I was just following the line of action, seeing these people chasing after Aladdin, him jumping and parkouring before parkour was a thing, and him using lines maybe I should have used a nom de plume. I was I finally get that now. I was there was just a lot of really smart wordplay, a lot of really sharp dialogue. It's just and then as soon as it's impressive and it's entertaining to a point, but as soon as Robin Williams's genie comes on, you can tell that the film is built around him. It's just so it's such a massive shift in just relative screen presence.
But you know what, though?
Yeah.
Kind of, not exactly but kind of with Heath Ledger's Joker,
mm-hmm.
It's not as soon as he comes on, it's just the genie for the rest of the film. He kind of comes and goes throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah, but he's, every single scene that he's in, he dominates.
He does, but...
Absolutely dominates.
It's not, every single scene is just surrounded around the genie.
Yeah, I'm not wondering what's the genie doing right now.
He's definitely a great supporting character throughout this, and I think that's what makes him so good,
mm-hmm.
is the fact that he does have a big number, and then he has some discussion with Aladdin,
right.
And then he's gone for a few minutes, and then he comes back.
You have a reliable, likable enough protagonist in Aladdin. You have his sort of immediate sidekick in Apu, but really Abu, but the genie really is the foil for Aladdin. It's Aladdin is the inadvertent straight man where he's just I don't know what you're talking about. It's okay, and he's just like Robin Williams' genie has such comic energy, such craziness. It's just so.
I mean, he's doing impressions of Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's this. That's when it really gets really weird and meta and crazy as shit, because he's just pulling from all these different references from it should not make sense for this to happen in this time span. We have a fucking scene where Aladdin and Jasmine are flying on a magic carpet past fucking Egypt, and a guy is trying to chisel one of the noses and accidentally fucks up the Sphinx, and that man is definitely going to die. And I'm just what era are we living in?
Yep.
Yeah, it's time is a flat circle. But anyway, it's a great movie. I love it. I would definitely recommend it, and I would definitely show it to my kids someday. It's a great film.
So I am also a huge fan of Aladdin.
Yeah.
When I was, even though I love The Lion King, and I probably put them pretty close in terms of if I was ranking the two of them. I have to listen back to the episode and see how I ranked them if I had them both on there.
Yeah.
I should do that.
Yeah.
So should you, listener.
So should you.
That being said, I absolutely always loved Aladdin. I think that was the film I would definitely go back to and watch more frequently than The Lion King. I think mostly because it is just a really good story in terms of the idea of this sort of poor street, pretty much homeless person who's
vagabond,
street rat, who's stealing just to live and has
living just to steal,
stealing just to eat, eating just to steal.
Yeah, very well put. It's almost like somebody wrote that.
Yeah,
and he, has acquired a very particular set of skills during his time as a street thief. Yeah. And it's, a very interesting, especially at this time in the early 90s. I mean, the love story in a film like this is basically a fucking requirement. So
yeah, that's we made a couple of jokes about that across the film, and I'm just
But I mean, that's just what this was always going to be.
It's an artifact of its time in a lot of ways. It's it's not the worst example of that sort of era, but it's certainly like it has its some parts of it is like, you know, you gotta like talk about it afterwards. Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of is what these films were.
Yeah.
And is there is going to be a love story at the heart of it, and there will be some sort of budding romance, and that's going to be what the film surrounds around, and that's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
But I think I mentioned last week briefly when we were talking about this, but one of the characters I've always loved a lot was Jafar, as I feel like he is a great villain because he fits into so many perfect roles. Like he's not just this outsider looking in, like he has access into everything surrounding what's going on throughout the film. I mean, he knows,
and parts that even like that ostensibly the most influential and powerful characters in this film do not have access to, like the catacombs. Like he just knows how to worm his way throughout the
because
palace and
he's
escape.
been he's
the hand of the king.
Yeah.
In a sort of sense, he's the royal vizier. Like he's the one who handles the actual shit. So why shouldn't he know about that stuff?
But at the same time, he also is always trying to get involved with the story somehow, and, and you know, uses that access to try to weave his way in. And it always feels so natural. But he also feels like this extremely menacing character.
The first proper scene of this film is him like dealing with some like ne'er-do-well like thief murderer who's like giving him the other part of this scarab in order to open up the Cave of Wonders. Like his actions are sort of like, they are the instigating, like they are the impetus for everything like being set into motion.
And also too, I mean, there's just a perfectly reasonable reason why he becomes this magical creature at the end of the film, which is also absolutely wonderful because, you know, so many other Disney films, whether it be, you know, Snow White or even Little Mermaid, I mean, we have these magical creatures who we just kind of accept that they are what they are, but there's a perfect reason why he's able to become a sorcerer and a giant snake, and he's able to become even a genie at the very end of it.
All of that is already sort of foreshadowed in, like, some of his principal actions, like his ability to disguise himself, his ability to, like, basically create that storm cloud, even though it's, like, through artificial, like, means and stuff. Like, he's already conversant in this. He's just not the most adept, and he just wants to be the most adept at it.
And he does, and that's obviously ends up being his downfall.
Yeah,
so
enters into a Faustian bargain that then bounds him to a life of servitude for all eternity.
I think is still one of the better endings in any Disney animated film that I can recall.
Yeah.
I mean, it leads to not actually killing the villain.
Yeah.
It leads to basically twofold. You outplay him at his own game.
Yeah,
and at the
his
same
ego
time,
against him.
force him into something that the main protagonist character has been forced into at some time, which raises all kinds of fucking questions. Like,
how did
was the genie a really terrible person 1,000 years ago? Like, it's actually quite brilliant.
He was blue.
Yeah, okay, that's
Babu Dee Babu Die.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of Aladdin. I think the animation is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the way that we move throughout these different scenes, the depth that's created throughout the different frames of this film is absolutely fantastic. And this is just a really well put together film, and obviously absolutely fantastic 2D animated film.
I have a question that I want to press to you because I know that you've said just now that like Jafar is probably one of your favorite villains.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring him up on our villains episode, but I've always been a huge fan,
Right.
especially when I was a kid.
Right. Do you think that one of the characteristics that sort of defines this so-called Renaissance period of Disney films that you mentioned before, like the 10-year period and the 10 films, like how much do the actual villains of those films actually play into that? Because I'd like, for me at least, when I was growing up, the Disney villains were my favorite characters of those films. Hands down, I didn't really give much of a fuck about any of the actual heroes.
I mean,
the villains really were the most eccentric and the most flamboyant and bombastic, like, out there personalities, and I just love their fucking costumes, and I just thought they were cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, they really defined a lot of parts of that
respective
era.
films. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I won't say that they were the reason why people went.
Yeah,
but I think the fact that the quality of their characters and the fact that they create the kind of conflict that they do in all of the great films that are in there. I mean, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but I mean, Scar, who is definitely not the best villain ever, but the fact that he can create all of this family infighting and in the next scene have this large Nazi number is
Nazi jackals.
Very interesting. Obviously, the voice of him is a much more well-known person. It's Jeremy Irons as the voice of Scar in The Lion King.
Which I did not realize that until you said it out loud. I was like, holy shit, that's where I recognize that voice. Yeah. That was how I felt like watching Lion King, like multiple. Not to jump around, just for both of these films, when you were citing like the actual voice actors behind them. Like I was
there's
like,
way more in Lion King.
There's way more in Lion King, but when you're actually citing the voice actors, well, the reason why there's more in Lion King is because they could afford to pay more people in Lion King versus like the outsized salary for Robin Williams in Aladdin. So that might have been part of it. But it's crazy to think how much vocal talent Disney was able to pull from in like voicing their own films. Like I was already sort of familiar with that when it comes to like their handling of the localization of like Hayao Miyazaki's films. Like you don't get Patrick Stewart to voice a character in Nausicaa Valley of the Wind and not have fucking money to back that up, or Shia LaBeouf for that matter in one of those films.
Or Andy Dick.
Or don't talk to me about that. I remember that now. Don't. Anyway, yeah, I think that the vocal talent combined with the animation for the villains is such a huge defining characteristic of those Renaissance films. Well, not the only thing, but I'm saying that's a huge for me at least.
I'm in the same boat because you look at Beauty and the Beast. Gaston is an absolutely fantastic villain because he's basically a much more nuanced version of somebody like Biff Tannen, who's just got this eccentric, toxic, masculine aura around him, and a woman just isn't interested, and
I'm gonna force myself on her.
Pretty much, and it turns into this, it's always a fight over a woman, usually in this era. In many eras of film. Yeah, but I mean,
many eras of human history.
Gaston is a fabulous villain, and so is Jafar, and I think Scar is a good villain too. And I mean, you can even go further on in this era. I mean, there are good villains here as well. I mean, look at the fantastic voice acting that James Woods did for Hades. I mean, he's fabulous as that Hercules.
He was fabulous as Hades. I mean, it's too bad he died in that tragic fire.
It's absolutely interesting that originally they had John Lithgow do all of the lines of Hades, and they had him read all of them, and he was there. And
I have to actually look up those recordings because I need to see that.
I don't know how readily available they are, but I do know he read all the lines for it, and they played it back and did with some of the animation, and it just fucking wasn't working.
Yeah, it just wasn't. Yeah.
And they brought in James Woods, who by all accounts is a fucking terrible person, and he fucking was perfect.
Yeah, you just needed a fucking terrible person to play Hades, the god of the underworld.
I would agree with you, Toussaint, in your assessment, and I absolutely love the villains in this era, and I think they're great, and I think that is definitely something that's been big time missing, not just from animated films too, but just in general, the antagonist in films needs to be just as important as the protagonist.
Yeah.
And it's missing from a lot of modern films.
And what's interesting about, would you say that those Disney villains of that era are, I wouldn't characterize them as multi-dimensional. I just think that they are just, they're funny. They're funny. They have humor about them. They have personality about them. They're not always just one mode of I'm not saying that they're multidimensional in the way that it's like, oh, this person has a tragic backstory and other things like that. It's like, oh, this person has pathos or something like that. No, they're played as straight villains, but they don't have just one mode about them where you have like Jafar where he's like contemplating, it's like, oh, God, I have to deal with that fucking princess until she gets married, and then she'll have us have us banished or worse, beheaded. Ooh, like just having those like playoff moments, like those comedy moments where he's not just always calculating, where he's like, holy shit, that would suck.
Or I mean, just the the actual animation of it.
Yeah.
When Jafar and Iago are slammed into the door, and then the door opens, and they're just basically crunched behind there, and they just slide down the.
Yeah.
Little things like that, I mean, definitely give them a personality.
Yeah.
I mean, you even get some of that with Scar, where some of it.
Yeah.
Even though pretty much after the first, like, big scenes with Scar, he's basically sidelined in The Lion King, which is a little awkward.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
He's kind of a piss pot, ineffectual king. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's kind of the whole point, that he's kind of sidelined, that he's like, he doesn't do shit, he ain't shit.
The Lion King is completely about Simba and his rise in that film.
Yep.
So, we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah.
Nick, give us some thoughts on Aladdin.
Okay. Yeah, not a fan. It's middle ground Disney for me, which is to say that it's got a lot of nice little parts. I do like the animation at times. But I think Aladdin, the protagonist, sucks.
Yep. I agree.
And even if a genie obviously dwarfs his presence, still need to kind of have an anchor when it comes to the emotional root of this film. I definitely don't have it with Aladdin himself. I also think maybe because of that, the love story sucks.
Yeah.
And those are two very quote unquote pertinent parts. Maybe not like,
They are two gears of this film for which the film has to pivot necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those, just doesn't really work for me. I think Robin Williams obviously is fantastic. I think the songs are weird because I think they work and are catchy, at least 3 of them, which I guess there's not that many songs on here. But I was specifically thinking of the, Step 1, do, and then Never Had a Friend Like Me and A Whole New World. Like, those are catchy little jams. But it's weird. I find myself slightly at odds sometimes because on the one hand I marvel at the animation that went into making this movie, especially in one of like the Genie song of Never Had a Friend Like Me, because it's just this kind of unprecedented marriage of chaotic energy and animation with an actual kind of vaudeville act, and it works very well. On the other hand, I also feel like it's too much of two things, and so therefore I don't quite give myself over to either one of them. Because, if you had a weak song with amazing visual, then it's easy to zero in on it, and vice versa. If you had a good song with, lackluster. And so I almost feel like it's almost like, kind of like Gaspar Noé's opening credit title sequence, Enter the Void. It's like, it's
I cannot believe you fucking cited the opening title sequence for Enter the Void in your opening comments on fucking Aladdin.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like
very on brand for you, Nicholas.
It's a great idea, and it's bright and shiny, and it bangs, and yet also like just watching it,
it makes your eyes hurt.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I'm truly giving myself over to this, because it's just kind of
there
shouting at me, and rather than letting me observe it, and so I'm not like terribly hot on this movie. I also don't really dislike it much. It's just one of those where I watched it when I was growing up all the time. I had the puffy VHS, and
yeah, I had those too. Yeah, with the white
pillowcase.
Yeah,
pillowcase.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew it started with the P, and I played the Super Nintendo game that we had talked about.
Oh my goodness, that level trying to get out of the Cave of Wonders.
Yeah,
sucked.
fuck that shit.
That was like that was the kind of like shit when I was a little kid. Like after like I don't know, like a good 30 minutes, like I would just throw the controller and turn the game off and put something else on.
Yeah,
well, fuck this.
That's
that
the
was the
shit
era.
that teaches you perseverance.
Yeah.
That's the shit that teaches you how to fucking survive in this dead world.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that was the era too of like Super Nintendo and whatnot, where like you couldn't save anything. You had to like either write down the passwords to get you back to the level. Otherwise, if you didn't, then you were screwed.
You're shit out of luck.
Which, by the way, I will point out that if you do still have a copy of The Lion King on Super Nintendo, remember at the level select screen, if you type in Barry, B-A-R-R-Y, you will unlock all the levels. You're welcome. And
he's like a living game facts over here, especially with just one game, and it just happens to be Aladdin.
No,
Lion King.
Oh, Lion King.
I didn't get too far in Aladdin.
Oh, okay.
I pretty much only got to the merchant parkour scene where you just had to bounce on the little tents.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have our game.
Yeah. What else? So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's right down the middle for me, so I don't begrudge anyone for liking it, and yet I also wouldn't quite champion it myself. That being said, I also feel like maybe just watching the live-action movie a week ago maybe hurt this rewatch because I had just experienced it, and unfortunately, even if the live-action movie is not great, it was a pretty shot-for-shot remake of it, so I had just experienced it in a very fancy new version, which is in no way better than this version, but it is very fresh in my mind of a story that I'm kind of already so on. So I'd be curious to see maybe if in a year or two, if I were to revisit this without the viewing of that behind me, if it would stand more on its own, because man, Disney really needs to start rethinking these live-action remakes, because I said it in... wait, did we do an episode? No.
We were just chatting about it.
I think we chatted, and I think I said, what is the point of them? And just rewatching this, it's just another reiteration of that question.
It is kind of a bit of a troubling trend that as these live-action remakes go on, the further we go on with them, the closer we are getting to just having a shot-for-shot remake. I mean, if you look at Jungle Book, and even though it's a totally different story, but Maleficent, I mean, the earlier films, even Cinderella to a lesser extent, I mean, they were very similar, but you had differences throughout, and you had...
There's a Cinderella live-action film?
Yes. With Lily James?
Yeah.
Cinderella?
I forgot about that.
It's very mediocre.
Yeah, very forgettable, apparently.
Yeah. But, I mean, as time has gone on, I mean, the films are getting just... I mean, I mentioned we were watching the animated film. Like, even Jafar banishing Aladdin and him going into a snowy Arctic place that probably doesn't exist anymore because of climate change. Yep. Basically, shot for shot, exactly how that went down in the animated film and in the live-action film. And that is like low-hanging fruit to try to do something different in that particular instance. I mean, you keep the basic story the same, but you change up the variables, and we can't even fucking do that. I don't know. So, that being said, I thought there were parts of the live-action film that actually are pretty good. Especially even though it was trying to do like a Bollywood dance number at the end. I actually thought that kind of I don't know what the best word is. That kind of excitement is something that they could have used in other parts of that film, because it seemed like the people and the characters in that scene were actually trying and happy to be there, where throughout the rest of the film they were trying to just... Now, let's watch these frames from the animated film, and you do that exact same thing right here. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that's
no,
fine. I was really big back when I made Snatch, but now I'm fucking just taking orders from the mouse, so...
Oh, Guy Snatchy.
I mean, I still can't believe Guy Ritchie made an Aladdin live-action film.
Welcome to the layer cake!
And he definitely did a job. There was not a lot of...
Is that a Guy Ritchie movie?
I don't think so.
There was not a lot of Guy Ritchie directorial imprint on this film, it feels like.
Really? The live-action Aladdin?
In terms of, like, the actual, like...
There was slow-mo for no reason.
There's a Matthew Vaughn film.
There was... Okay. There was spinning 180 cameras around singular motions. I mean, it's not going to look like it, but it definitely didn't need any of that, and it was in here.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anyways, getting away from that, I'm I'm a huge fan of the animated film, and giving a rating on it, I would give it a super high rating of 4.5 out of 5, as I am a huge fan of Aladdin. It was a very big part of my growing up in terms of becoming a film fan, especially at that age when animated films, especially Disney animated films, were basically just what I went to see whenever I was taken to see movies. So I was a huge fan, absolutely loved the genie then, and still love Robin Williams' performance now, and love basically most of the characters throughout this film, even some nuanced performances like the, what's the name of her tiger? I always forget. Raja. Like, that tiger has no lines. It is not a speaking character. And yet that tiger...
He ain't going to be in the Screen Actors Guild.
That tiger delivers so many great moments throughout the entirety of the film. Its closeness with Jasmine, and then even the comedic part where he gets made into a little tiger towards the end is great. And that's something I love about this film, is I feel like its characters, its story, obviously the fabulous animation, and just the great voice acting and wonderful songs make this an absolutely fantastic film.
Yeah.
For final thoughts on
for Aladdin.
That's yeah, correct. I think that it is pretty much as I said before. I think it's a benchmark film. I think that it's a incredibly well animated film. It ages very well with regards to that. I'd have to say, kind of piggybacking off of Nick's criticisms, yeah, the love story is pretty staid. I think that Aladdin is not all that interesting of a character. If you're coming to this film, you're usually coming to it for like the larger than life personalities in descending order of the genie, Jafar, Iago, and the magic carpet. And none of those are actually the main character. Some of those are supporting characters, or the villain, or the supporting characters for the villain, or the supporting characters for the supporting characters. It's not really Jasmine. It's not really Aladdin himself. But they're okay. So, yeah, I like this film a lot.
Good.
Yeah.
So what would you rate it?
What would I rate it? I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Alrighty. Yeah. 2.5 out of 5 for me. I could live without Aladdin, and I also don't mind watching Aladdin. It's kind of one of those things.
Okay. Fair. Very well. So, the next film that Disney put out, I mean, Beauty and the Beast is right up there too, but I would say that Lion King is probably the film that most people would be the first film they think of when they think of this era. Not sure. Beauty and the Beast is right there too, but I know that Nick loves Beauty and the Beast, so I'm not saying that it's not a great film, and that it's also not a film that people usually think of first, but Lion King was like a thing.
Where's his Best Picture nominee? That's what I thought.
Okay.
That's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, are you done?
Yep.
Okay. So Lion King came out 2 years later in 1994, and surrounds a lion cub, Crown Prince, who is tricked by his treacherous uncle into thinking he caused his father's death. He then flees into exile and despair, only to learn in adulthood about his identity and his responsibilities. Come on. It's an hour and 24-minute film. We can make a better fucking description than that.
Oh, yeah.
So the film stars, James Earl Jones is the big voice that we hear throughout this playing
Another
Simba's
consistent
father.
theme where it's just like, it seems like the supporting characters dwarf that of the main characters.
I mean, in terms of actual, like, line readings, James Earl Jones probably is close to the top.
Yeah.
So, other than he, you also have Jeremy Irons doing the voice of Scar, his terrible brother. And then you have...
Just awful. Just a dog shit brother, all
He's
in
just
all.
not great.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And then you have Jonathan Taylor Thomas doing young Simba, and Matthew Broderick doing adult Simba.
Yeah.
Also, here are Rowan Atkinson, previously mentioned, as the voice of Zazu, and Whoopi Goldberg as one of the hyenas. And also, too, you have some other great people who do wonderful work here, including Cheech Marin, and also Nathan Lane, who is just a absolute treasure to acting, and he should be in more. But he's a mainly stage performer at this point, but he's absolutely wonderful, and he's giving a great performance in the movie The Birdcage. I don't know why I felt like I had to say that, but it's just true.
You know what? That's
Rob
fine.
Williams, we were talking about him.
Oh,
So.
he's also wonderful in that movie. That's just a good movie. I mean,
We should do it sometime. I've never
you ever seen it?
I've never seen it.
Oh,
If we do it,
Mhm.
I think we should do the French film and it
okay.
for funsies. La Caille La Folie.
Is that how it's pronounced?
No.
Okay. That's kind of cool.
That's a pretty late Gene Hackman film too. I mean, he wasn't like retired yet. I think his last film was Welcome to Mooseport. but that was pretty late in his career.
Yeah.
He retired. He stuck to it. Like he
sure
does not
did.
come back.
Well, I mean, come on. You make a Welcome to Mooseport. What else do you need to say in your career?
Ending on a high note.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of him, he was in a few things after that,
He
but
was
they're
an
all.
enemy of the state too.
I was
So
gonna
that's around
say
that
he was in a
time.
lot of minor things. I think after that, like Behind Enemy Lines and oh god, what's that one where he I just had it in my head and now I forgot. Thanks a lot, Satan.
The Royal Tenenbaums. Is that what you're thinking?
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. Even though that's a really good example.
Let's just say we do
Runaway Jury is what I was thinking.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where he played the asshole lawyer,
Yeah.
jury person.
I don't know.
thing.
He was
yeah.
in the early '90s. He was like getting shit done. Like in this 6-year span, he was in Unforgiven, The Firm, and Get Shorty, and also The Birdcage. So I mean, he had a good little run there, and then Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, and done. Good for him.
Good for him.
Got the fuck out.
Yeah.
All right. So, Lion King, as I mentioned, an absolute classic by most people's definition, and also is going to have a live-action film coming out later this year with all kinds of people who are prominent actors now and people would know, like
Donald Glover as Simba.
let's say Donald Glover, James Earl Jones returning as Mufasa. Also,
Beyonce.
you have Chiwetel
Ejiofor.
Ejiofor?
Ejiofor, yeah.
What's that?
Chiwetel Ejiofor?
There it is. I combined his two names.
Yeah.
Sure.
Doing the voice of Scar, even though Jeremy Irons actually tried to come back as the voice of Scar and was denied, which is fine.
That's fine. They wanted to do something different, but not too
No, they
different.
didn't.
Not really.
They let James Earl Jones come back, and he's got the most recognizable voice.
I know, but who else could you cast in that role after James Earl Jones?
I don't know.
A lot of people.
No.
You were wanting to do something different.
No, I mean, like,
You either want to do something different or
you want to do something different, but you don't want to do something too different. I feel like that is the definition by what you guys are describing from your experience with Aladdin. That is
Yeah, but I feel like we're reaching peak. Like, okay, well,
I mean,
now
yeah, it is
we're
peak.
going to put
It's-
an actor who already did the role. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
2 years
yeah,
from now, it's
yeah,
going to be,
Yep.
now we're going to take the same exact movie, but we're going to convert it in a post-3D conversion and render some of the animation in a higher depth than it was before, and we're going to call it a different thing.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was like actually saying that it would actually just probably come out better, like if you had the actual audio recordings and you had some like audio genius just like clean that shit up, you'd probably get a better product than actual current day James Earl Jones trying to do the voice again.
So here's the thing. Now that you have this one coming out, which is going to be the first one that's relying all on non-humans, I feel like someone's going to do that just at home and homebrew that shit and put it on, not YouTube probably, but YouPorn or something, where all files that you want to watch, like The Big Short, or others. No, it's a joke, but it's not, because random movies pop up because no one takes things down on YouPorn. So, anyway.
Well, at any rate, there are some good. I think there are some good voice choices in that film, like Seth Rogen doing the voice of Pumbaa is interesting. I love the idea of John Oliver doing the voice of Zazu.
That's
I think
a
he's
great
a great pick.
Great baton passing. I gotta say though, as much as I think Billy Eichner is like the dead ringer for that kind of voice, I do not think we as a nation should endorse anybody who produces Billy on the Street, which is one of the most annoying pieces of media ever.
You know, I agree. It's every time I see it, I'm like, why the fuck does this exist?
I like Billy Eichner. Like, I like his tweets. I like him as a person.
Yeah.
Apparently, the show he was on Hulu, Difficult People, was actually pretty good. Seemed like a decent dude. But it's not funny to just shout at elderly people nonsense. Like, I just don't get it. Like, maybe I'm being weird, but I don't
think you're being weird.
Just,
I don't
there's
think
no
you're being
joke. So
there's no joke. It's the joke is that he's flamboyant and feminine.
But he's not even either one of those. He's just obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like Jack from Will and Grace is both of those things.
Yeah.
And
I think that's just the public's perception of like what
gay people are. Cause
yeah.
That's kind of sad because
I know
Billy Eichner is
sad,
supposed to be kind of on the front lines for advocating for.
I know, yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm not even going to speak for that because I can't and I don't know. But
exactly. Yeah.
We don't need to make any more, okay, Billy?
Yeah.
Take that Lion King money.
Yeah, take the Lion King
Do something
money.
useful with it.
Yeah.
Probably not. Probably just going to do that on steroids now.
Yeah.
So this was 94, I was 7, so I was very much aware of what I was seeing, and I remember seeing The Lion King in theater and everything that came from The Lion King, so loved this as a kid, loved The Lion King as I was growing up. And I think the other thing about this particular film that's interesting, that always kind of falls a little bit, is that not all of them, but most of the original songs in this film were written by Elton John, which I find pretty interesting because that feels like something that kind of gets forgotten. But I think that
makes a lot of sense now in retrospect, now that you've said that, because I think that as much as I enjoy not to jump the gamut, but as much as I enjoy the musical numbers in Aladdin, I think that the ones in Lion King are just a league apart. That's not to say that I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges in this sort of respect, but I'm just saying the thing that I remember most from Lion King is not the animation, but rather the music.
The music, I mean, the
music outstrips it.
The music, the instruments that are played throughout it. I mean, I said it, we were just watching the film, a couple hours ago. I mean, the opening 6-minute sequence in the Pride Land, leading up to the title card smash with the end of Circle of Life song, is basically filmmaking perfection, in my humble opinion. I mean, you're just basically setting the scene for everything you were about to see without actually just telling the audience everything. You're just letting everything happen.
Yeah.
And all the characters basically make an appearance in some way, shape, or fashion. And it is just wonderful storytelling through showing. And also just a great, I don't want to say pornographic, but it's just like the idea of like trying to hit all these emotions at one time. Like, it is just leading up to the very ending of that opening sequence, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And by pornographic, I don't mean sex, but you know what I was going for.
Yeah, it's
or
just
you
it's just
Nick,
indulgent. It's just a sensory overload.
It's going for a certain emotion,
Yeah.
and it pretty much does it in the opening sequence of an animated film that you have no context for.
Yeah.
So, I'm very interested to see what the live action film, because I'm assuming it'll just be shot for shot.
Oh, I bet it's gonna open with the It's gonna be a shot for shot remake of the original.
Yeah.
Thing about the live action, if they're smart, which I don't think they are, they would actually try to make the Broadway version live action. So that way you are getting an adaptation of The Lion King, but like we could do with an actual sequence of the song He Lives in You and a few other ditties from the Broadway musical, which in my opinion kind of eclipses the film in a lot of ways. I mean, what The Lion King was back then was monumental, but I feel like what The Lion King on Broadway was to Broadway in its era was even more fire than the original film was.
I mean, that was a really big deal.
That was the first Broadway play I ever saw, like, on Broadway.
I'm sure it's the first Broadway show a lot of people saw.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think it would have been a long time before I saw an actual Broadway play if I hadn't gone to see that one, because that one had come out when we were young enough to go see a play. I mean, I know I had seen other things, but I don't know that I had gone down. Like, I knew in my head when I went and saw that I was seeing something that was quote-unquote on Broadway, and that this was a big deal.
So, just to wrap up my first thoughts on it, I think the Lion King is an absolutely fantastic film. I think that even though it does not have, I don't think, as good of a story as Aladdin does, I think overall the animation is right on the same path, and it is a different way. I mean, just the stampede that takes place through there is just absolutely incredible that was able to happen in a 2D animated film and look as fucking fantastic, which actually makes me a little disappointed with the final fight between Scar and Simba, because it just doesn't look that good. And the fact that you're able to do these great scenes earlier throughout, and just it's not just like great, slow moving scenes. Like that stampede scene is like there's something happening every single millisecond in the frame. Like you're seeing action happening, and then you have the like slow motion.
That's the one
slowing down
thing
frame.
in this entire film that just did not age, because I do think in 1994 it probably looked cool. I mean, I remember watching it, and just because I think people take the fluidity of animation for granted, that it always goes at a certain speed or faster. So the idea of animation like slowed down in a frame by frame, which harkens back to actually projecting something and and having a tangible speed to it. I think because it's 1990s technology doing it, it certainly shows its age, because if we did it now, I think it'd look okay, at least like the intent behind it. But when we were watching it, and that was the remastered version, you know what I mean, it had this weird banding effect where the fluidity of those lions moving were very choppy in a weird way, in a way that the whole film usually rises above.
I was going to say, it really wasn't present throughout the rest of the film, so it just was kind of odd. But, I mean, there are so many iconic shots throughout this. I mean, other than the opening sequence during the Hakuna Matata song, you have the awesome walking of the three characters as you see Simba aging, and the scene's basically moving perfectly fluidly throughout, and they actually show that shit in the fucking trailer for the new one, which I assumed was going to be there, but come on, we can do better than this. So
can they? Can they do better than that?
I fucking know they can.
Can they? I don't think they can.
I just think that they're just going for the low-hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That entire adaptation is just low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
it's all low-hanging fruit.
So and the Be Prepared number from Scar is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. The idea of forcing in Nazi ideology into a children's film.
Not ideology, but imagery.
Well,
a comparison.
It's not really
I'm like, what
you keep saying the Nazis thing, and I just want to point out that he's not really a Hitler. He has henchmen by the numbers.
Yeah, the marching sequence is obviously meant to be evocative of like some type of
he's
fascist,
in no way advocating
sort of
for
popular,
anything other than just like
the elevation of himself. Yeah,
that's
right. Yeah,
I'm just saying we've said Nazi a lot, that I guess I'm putting my voice out there that I don't think Scar is Disney.
Right. No, I think that the whole promise of him is like, support me or follow me and you'll never go hungry again. I'm just like, that's been the creed of many a populist fascist.
Yeah,
asshole.
The marching hyenas.
That
really
is
what-
that is definitely like.
Yeah,
I feel like that's explicit. That's actually been cited as being like, yeah, we're
Third Reich,
yeah, going for a triumph of will
iconic,
vibe here. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will somewhat relent on what I was previously saying.
I mean, you could. I'm just
But at the same time, though, I do think that Scar does have this really manipulative, villainous background happening that I don't necessarily know if you really like you see other villains of this era, and they're all evil for different ways. I mean, the fucking guy from Pocahontas is just out there just genociding people.
Yeah, I'm here to just kill brown people on this new continent.
that's what we call a Hitler.
Yeah, and yeah, when Scar came on, like I remember saying, "It's like, look at this little finger motherfucker," and I know that I made Alex laugh with that, and I'm just like, yeah, that's exactly that type of character, though.
You were talking about Jafar when you said that.
Was I talking about Jafar?
Yes.
Oh shit!
But Scar is definitely.
I feel like he fits that mold too.
He does because
Yeah.
he's a weaker version of. He's the weaker brother between him and Mufasa.
Yeah, and he basically just really what his power is just manipulation and just like turning people against one another and selective disinformation.
But also too. I mean, I think there are definitely more parallels than just the one scene.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So that being said, I will not completely drop off of that, but I will agree that I'm probably going a little too far into that. So
Next,
moving on.
who wants to go next? You.
Okay. Yeah, I think The Lion King is a fantastic Disney movie. I think. I'm trying to think. In this period, I prefer Beauty and the Beast to everything else, but I will say I don't think that a sustainable 30 minutes of Disney has ever been matched other than to the first 30 minutes of this film. I think the opening sequence, I think Just Can't Wait to Be King is a killer bop, and I think pretty much everything all the way up to the Stampede is just a perfect ideation of what I would want on a Disney movie, which is just straight bangers, evil villains, and and an actual emotional heart that's beating until it's not. And yeah, and I just think Scar in this movie is a fantastic villain because he's so little, not in stature, but he just has one interest, and that's himself, obviously, and it's to be king. And the way he goes about that is not by beating his chest, but basically in true Shakespearean spirit, considering this is Hamlet with African animals, just goes around whispering in people's ears because he's kind of too chicken shit to actually try to fight for what he believes is his. And he doesn't care about the difference between killing a child or killing, his brother. Like, it's just some dark, fucked up shit, and I think that that's the mark of a true villain, compared to someone like Jafar, for example, who just wants to be powerful in a way he doesn't even comprehend. Which
He too is also small, but he's not as hyper fixated on a specific sort of goal. It's more of like angling for power in any situation. He didn't want to marry Jasmine until Jasmine became a means by which for him to a fast track to power, just in general as a whole. Like it first became he wanted to be Sultan, then he wanted to be a sorcerer, then he wanted to be a genie, which was basically the equivalent of a god, and then that he kept on flying higher and higher off the heights of his own hubris until finally he was sent crashing down, and he's confined to an itty-bitty living space for all fucking eternity.
And to add to that, Jafar too, though, is his big crux with the protagonist is that a little device showed him Aladdin, and he was like, "Oh, that's my guy." So it's still just tenuous at best that they're even in conflict. Whereas this movie, the family dynamic,
Snow White does the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Don't
Okay.
I'm not trying to. Yeah.
No, I just
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And in The Lion King, just everything is worked out perfectly here, from the father and son dynamic to, you have two codes of masculinity kind of on his shoulder at such a young age, and ultimately one won out for all the wrong reasons, and it sends him obviously out and kind of banished almost by his own doing, because he just takes his uncle at his word instead of fighting for himself. And what I like too is that then when he's exiled, so to speak, and finds himself alone, he's then raised by the cutest gay couple who kind of teaches him what the true meaning of like being a man is, which is not any type of viciousness or like courage in the face of like true violent whatever. It's just claiming what's yours, and because they claim who they are every day just by living in that jungle, Simba is able to take inspiration from that, and I just think that's beautiful. And I think the songs in this movie are fantastic. I think the animation is actually gorgeous throughout. I mean, there are some you can say it about Aladdin as well, and I'll say it about The Lion King, which is that they're every shot a painting.
I mean, technically every single background is itself a Matte painting, so it's like so.
And I just think it's a gorgeous film. I think the animation is fantastic, and I agree that the last 10 minutes or so is its weakest point because they kind of trapped themselves into a corner because they had
kind of like Scar. He got eaten in the end.
Yeah. Because they had built up such a great conflict that the only way that people were going to leave the theater happy is if there was a big fight, even though there didn't really need to be one. Like, it could have just been an actual role reversal of Scar being, hanging on a rock and Simba just doing the same thing, and that would have been the way of the fucking jungle, and we all could have left happy. But instead, it had to kind of at least go into the kitty cat likes to scratch mode.
Well, the other thing that's absolutely fantastic about the ending of this, the climax of this film, is that Simba has no interest in killing Scar because he doesn't want to be this murderous lion like Scar is.
But I'd be okay with that.
I know, I would pretty much too.
He's a lion.
But I actually feel like Scar actually gets a worse death because of that. Because he doesn't get murdered, he gets sent out and he's basically fed to fucking people who are lower on the food chain.
Has any other Disney villain, like I mentioned this before while we were watching it, but what other Disney villain has had a worse comeuppance than Scar?
Ursula's was pretty bad in Little Mermaid because she gets stabbed to death by a boat.
Yeah, she gets stabbed to death by a boat. Okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
I mean, Jafar's in a fucking lamp. I mean, that's not a big deal.
But you should see the boat.
He's not dead. Oof, man.
Get a big boat.
Man.
Damn it. I mean, I think that most of the villains, what Gaston just falls off of the top of the cliff.
Yeah, it's top of the castle.
See, here's the thing about Gaston really quick, because I can talk about beating the beast any day. Gaston is one of the greatest villains because he so desperately wants to be a villain in the piece, and yet he doesn't realize he's just a side character that no one cares about, and that is reflected even in his death. So, anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with
By
that.
the way, Luke Evans gives a fantastic performance in the live-action version of Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
We've covered it on this podcast, but anybody who's looking for anything to latch on to in that particular film, which is by far the best live-action film that they've done so far, in my opinion, although Jungle Book is pretty good too.
Jungle Book is hilarious.
Yeah. Luke Evans, though, is by far the best part of that film.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion. Toussaint, Lion King.
Lion King. Lion King is one of those films that I'll be honest, I didn't watch it as much as the other sort of respective Disney films of that era during the Renaissance. I don't know, just didn't have it on VHS as readily as maybe I got that later, and I still watched it and I enjoyed it. And that's sort of like how I feel about this film. It's I think that the animation, like Nick mentioned, is gorgeous. I think that this is really, really well done. I don't think it's as expressive. It's not as the concept for it does not allow for the same sort of expression and lucidity as like the contours of the genie in Aladdin, and so maybe that's one of those things that sort of like it doesn't really like leave an impression on me as strongly as that. I think that the Stampede sequence is one of the most memorable sequences in a Disney animated film that I've ever seen. I think that is absolutely incredible. And the rest of it,
I mean, how many hours do you think it took to draw that shit?
a lot, a fuck ton.
I mean,
like every.
I mean, I would probably be judged in terms of time. It took a group of people to draw it, like years worth of time.
Are you talking about the first pass or the second pass where they went back and they changed Sonic's hair?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm talking.
I'm sure
that's totally what I'm talking about, Nick. Thank you.
I'm sure it's out there, but in terms of the time, I'm sure it's measured in months, not hours.
Yeah, it's a lot. The music for this film, like I mentioned before, is incredible, and that was basically written by Elton John. I'm both
Elton John and Tim Rice.
I'm both surprised and not surprised at all, because this entire soundtrack, this entire film, back to back, every single musical number is incredible. I am just absolutely floored by it. It's just really well done. It's really remarkable, very memorable. I think that James Earl Jones as Mufasa is like one of the great cartoon father figures. Like, I think he's just like a really awesome character and just very cool character to witness. I think that Jeremy Irons as Scar, it's not Jeremy Irons' like best and most memorable role, but it certainly is something that is like he brings his all to that role, and I think that it works. I think that at least among a lot of the vocal performances, those are the ones that really stick out to me. Those are the ones I really like. Yeah, and I like the story of Simba, just basically like this young boy this young cub who's trying to come into not only an acceptance of a responsibility and a lineage that he has to rise up to, but also learning to forgive himself and to, like you said, to take what is his and to accept both not only what he's entitled to that, but also the responsibility that comes through that entitlement. And he understands that it's not just because, oh, this belongs to me, but it's like, no, this is something that I have to do. Like, this is something that my dad wanted me to do, and this is something that I have to do for my family and for my pack, for my tribe, and like this, like, I can't just go off and live in the forest forever, because then if I do that, then I forsake them, and that's just as bad. No, not even just as bad, but worse than what I accuse myself of having done for, like, my circumstance of being near my father when he passed away. Even though he then learns that it wasn't his fault anyway. He was just a pawn in a larger fucking game. So, yeah, it's a great story. I like it. And those are my feelings on The Lion King. Don't got a lot of them, but I do enjoy it.
According to stories on the internet, the Stampede sequence was completely done via computer-generated imagery. Is the only part of this film.
Yeah, I could see that.
The group of animators that solely focused on this sequence spent their entirety of working for 3 years to create that 6-minute sequence.
Holy shit! I could totally see that. I think
that is. Ooh, boy.
Was the marching scene also computer animated? It had to be.
I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
But the story I was just reading while not paying attention to you, Tucson, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. At least you brought something to the table.
Sort of. Yeah. But I should have also been paying attention to you, so I apologize for that.
Continue.
No, it's not. Really not. Anyways, that being said, the story I was reading basically said that there was no way to draw it without the stampede happening.
To have as much variation in that scene, they would have to have it being computer generated. Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah.
But still, having the look it has, it obviously it shows that it took that long to do.
Yeah.
Especially then. So
It's just really well done.
I
It's
agree.
just, like it doesn't feel out of place because I know that at least during that era when people were playing with just 3D animation as a whole and computer generated animation, trying to meld both that within the rigors of 2D animation, sometimes it didn't always match up. Sometimes it just graded against one another. And Disney was really on their shit. They're like, nope, we're not gonna put that shit out there if it looks like garbage. We're not gonna do that.
I can't imagine them having a department that spends 3 years on one small part of a film now.
Yeah, that's just filmmaking. Sometimes, like,
Is it?
yeah. Sometimes.
I don't think they would.
I know. That's like the one parallel that I think of to that is what was that? Like, this is not even like in the realm of animation. It's entirely in the realm of live action. I think of like Peter Jackson's like World War I documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old, where he like spent like all those years.
But that's like a passion project.
I know, it's like, but
historical like proportions.
yeah, but it was like a commission piece that he had to like finish and like do stuff like that. Like it's yeah.
But that's like a whole project. He's saying like one department, one
scene.
Getting to just make it right.
Oh, I have another example.
Okay.
I have another example.
I will shoot that one down too.
No, you won't. No, you actually won't, because this actually pertains to this. Transformers 2.
I will shoot it down. I don't give a fuck.
No, Transformers 2.
Stop it.
There was an actual scene. I don't know if you remember that when Sam Witwicky
tried to block it out.
No, when Sam Witwicky goes to college.
You just said that with a straight face.
And he is being approached by a young woman in his bedroom, and her face transforms into Decepticon crazy like robot face.
Of course it does.
That actually took the duration of nearly the entire production of the film to actually get down.
I wish you were a Transformer so you could transform into someone who wouldn't tell that fucking story ever.
Wow.
All 60 days of production it took them to make that.
Where they killed somebody.
Shit, man.
I'm sorry. That was the third one.
It was a bad movie. It was all a bad
They
movie.
all are.
I mean,
I
like the first one.
I did when it came out.
Yeah,
I will fully admit that the other ones make that one look like shit in association. Yeah. Like, it's just...
I have a couple cinephiles that are willing to, like... I don't know.
Oh, that's fine.
They're willing to die. They're willing to die on a hill for that Last Night Transformer film. I don't know.
What? They can have that.
The one where Optimus
Prime... That would
Prime,
do the world a favor.
The one
is that the one with Anthony Hopkins?
Playing his Westworld character?
Yeah, and it's the one where, they go back in time. They say, hey, like, turns out the Transformers were here all along. And there's also...
Didn't we already know that?
There's that weird scene where Mark Wahlberg
Literally every time they get a Transformer, it's covered in dust. And
Mark Wahlberg is like...
God, guys, I think it's a Transformer.
His daughter is like... less than 18, maybe less than the age, the legal age of the legal age of consent, and she's dating some like bad boy guy, and there's an entire like sequence that's devoted to like the Romeo and Juliet clause in Texas, and I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know how I feel about this.
And you said you have cinephile friends who love this film?
Oh yeah, I mean like like some people are really willing to go to bat for it to just being like an enjoyable like piece of like trash cinema that knows exactly what it is and plays those gratifications like earnestly in that sort of way. It's not trying to make some pretense that it's high art, but that it at least like I'm really paraphrasing their arguments by however so many like different degrees of separation, and it's been a while since I've talked to them about this.
I absolutely love the movie The Island, and that is a absolutely terrible Michael Bay film. I've got a poster of it in this room.
Yeah.
It's a horrible film, but it is a fun piece of trash that seems to be aware of this silly sci-fi nonsense.
Yeah.
So I could buy that. Now, if they were trying to say that it's a great film, I might I might be interested to hear what they had to say about it.
I think it'd be interesting. It's just a weird situation.
So, final ratings on The Lion King. Who would like to go first?
I would give Lion King a 3.5 out of 5. I think that is a very good movie. I would look forward to watching it again. I would highly recommend it. It just really didn't resonate as heavily with me as this viewing as it has maybe in the past, and I'm sure that would change if I saw it again. It's just from having watched it again after like however so many years, maybe 5 to 8 years since the last time I watched this film. So yeah, it's beautiful. Go watch it.
Yep. I would give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's a straight classic from the era. I very much enjoy it. I don't think it's perfect from start to finish, but I think it's one of the best thought-out stories of that era, where most of the characters have either a tangible stake in the proceedings or something to offer the foundation to have those stakes fight each other. And I just think it's all around. It's just a good little bop. That's
okay.
You've been using
That's what he's got.
You've been using that word
No,
all.
I said banger. I said ditty.
Banger, ditty,
Now
ditty,
I'm saying bop.
Bop.
Those are different.
And if you use the same term, that's okay.
Yeah.
But he didn't. I think he did say bop once. But it's okay. You've been jumping around. There's no problem.
Did I say bop once?
I think you may have. That's okay.
Oh,
There's
okay.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I guess
That's fine.
this is my last podcast.
Check the tape. See if he actually said it. I actually give this the same rating as Aladdin. I absolutely love it. It's a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It is an absolutely just fantastic work of animation. Wonderful voice work, great storytelling, wonderful villain, as is a highlight of this era of Disney, and specifically Disney animated film, and just a wonderfully drawn film and a wonderfully told story. So it's 4.5 out of 5 for me for the 1994 animated Lion King. If you out there have any thoughts on these two films or on the two new films that have come out this year or will be coming out this year, feel free always to send them on to us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also try to find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at filmtankshow. And you can also find all of our episodes on filmtankshow.com or on iTunes or Stitcher, where you could also rate or review our podcast, which we would like, and you'd probably like too. If you like the podcast and you took time to rate it, I'm assuming it's because you liked it, or it's because you think it's fucking shit. So either way, please just do something.
Either way, thank you.
Well, yeah.
Well, you know what?
If they're taking the time to rate it, at least,
Yeah.
Unless it's just like looking at it and just saying, no, 0 stars, not horror, fuck you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hate is its own form of passion. That's all right.
Speaking of not horror, how is Shudder going? Is that going strong or
Really strong.
yeah?
It's got a great selection. They're even dipping their toe into originals without sacrificing anything that they were offering before.
Now, does it feel like they could at some point or
I don't
not?
know, because one of their quote-unquote biggest sellers right now is that they revived Joe Bob Briggs, who used to do Up All Night on USA and Monster Vision, maybe on USA or a different channel, where he would host horror movies. And that's happening live every Friday night on their channel, where he will do a double feature, and he will do his, patented redneck commentary in the commercial breaks. And it actually does stop, at whatever interval, lets him ramble, and then it goes right back to the movie, and it's fantastic. So I think considering they're still offering their shit for $6, maybe $5, that's a pretty damn good deal.
Especially if you're into what the content is for that. It's
Even if
from
you're
what I've heard, a no-brainer for
even
pretty
if
much
you're
everybody.
not, like if you're not the biggest horror buff, I think it's worth it for a month. Like, to subscribe and look at their catalog, you're going to find things that are not, like, I would say, super scary. Like, there's horror of all kinds in there, to the point where, like, something like, it's not on there, but something like Take Shelter could be on there, because that's a horrific situation. I'm not saying that's their bread and butter, but you never know what you're going to find on there. There's something for everybody there. Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I've been hearing good things for a couple of years now, so it's good to hear that it's still going strong.
If I had to cancel like all my streaming services, I feel like that would be the one I would keep. One, because it is the cheapest, and yet two, because you're getting actual bang for those cheap bucks.
Okay, good to know. Coming up on episode 194, we are going to take some time to talk about a Western. Something we really haven't done. I mean, we did...
Westworld!
Yeah. We did an episode on the first season of Westworld, and we did an episode on Django Unchained, but we've never really taken time to devote an episode to talking about an actual, like, true Western.
Classical, yep. Mm-hmm. The era of John Ford, and in this case, Howard Hawks. That was a spoiler of who might be directing the movie we're doing.
Well, so the film we are doing, and I mean, I know pretty much nothing about Westerns, so we went to the resident film tank Western buff, which is Nick Cheney, believe it or not, as he is for pretty much everything that is in anime or gangster films. And he said the film that he thought was the best, that he liked the most, and is a well-known Western, is the 1959 film Rio Bravo, starring John Wayne and Dean Martin. So,
those little scams.
We'll talk more about it on our next episode, but just since we don't really talk about Westerns very often at all on this podcast, I guess maybe just give a brief reasoning of why you suggested Rio Bravo.
Yeah, I think Rio Bravo is a fun Western because it was just at the tail end of the true studio heyday of Westerns, and yet it's still very much from that era. Like, just after this movie, we are going to slide right into spaghetti Western, revisionist Westerns, neo-Westerns, and all sorts of genre-bending versions, but this is one of the last times that the gang got together, including some other people who weren't really present, like Dean Martin, to give them one last show. And I think it's fun because it's one of the chillest Western. It has a fantastic final shootout that's a great set piece and everything, but leading up to that, it's a lot of downtime and just people shooting the shit, trying to keep...
Sounds like a Nick Cheney movie.
Yeah, but still from the era in which, quippy lines and whatnot. But just a lot of people just trying to keep the peace until the peace cannot be kept no more. So,
good to know.
Big fan.
Looking forward to talking about it coming up on our next episode. So, from Toussaint Egan, Nick Cheney, myself, Alex Diekman, as always, thank you very much to everyone out there for listening to us here on Film Tank, and we will be catching up with you next time.
It's the circle of life. Bum, ba, da, bum, bum.